Wait, that's it? No, that can't be it. What? By the time this video is out, because my uploading schedule is absolute shit, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has already hit theaters, came out on digital, and I've already seen it at least 26 times. And after fully watching the movie in its entirety, I can 100% confirm that I'm not the same person I was 2 hours ago. Yeah, this movie single-handedly changed the trajectory of my life. I can now shit rainbows and breathe time. It's just that good. But you guys don't really need me to tell you that, right? Because you guys already know. Literally everyone has been talking about it. The score is good, the reviews are good, the characters are good, the music is good. It's so good that even the racists are putting aside their differences to praise this movie. And do you know how good of a movie you need to be to get a racist to say, hey, maybe I actually don't hate black people? Animation offers a medium of storytelling and visual entertainment which can bring pleasure and information to people of all ages everywhere in the world. That is a direct quote from Walt Disney himself, and I gotta say that I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. Because outside of racism, animation is what Mr. Walt Disney here loved the most. Animation is everything and everywhere. There isn't a single day that goes by where you won't see some form of animation, or at least something animated. In stores, on roads, in your computers, in advertisements, and in so much more. Animation makes the world go around, and without it, we'd probably all be fucking dead. That was a bit of a hyperbole, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? Right? Guys? Not only is animation a beautiful medium that expands on one's own personal creativity, but it also comes in all forms and styles, from stop motion to 3D to 2D cell animation, claymation, borderless cutout styles, all the way to perfect 3D/2D blends. And it's kind of amazing to see how far the medium has come from, well, this. Which isn't really impressive by any means in today's standards, but looking back is actually quite impressive because they managed to pave the way for many generations to come. But within the past 2 decades or so, there's been a very massive change within its overall presentation to audiences, because 2D animation, in the West at least, has been dying down significantly, especially when it comes to things such as the big screen. And all of this started with a little underground company you probably haven't heard of, known by the name of Pixar. In 1995, Pixar changed the game when they released the first completely 3D animated film, Toy Story. And when it turned out to be a smash hit with all audiences of all ages, every other studio in the world said, fuck whatever 2D project we had cooking up, let's do what these guys are doing right now. So they did it. And as a result, 2D animation in the West for the big screens died off faster than the Flash could nut, because nowadays 2D animation in America at least is usually just restricted to direct-to-streaming movies or TV shows. It didn't quite happen as quickly as that. I'm definitely exaggerating just a bit here, because after the release of Toy Story, 2D animated projects in the West were still around, like Atlantis or The Prince of Egypt. In addition, with other 3D projects on the rise like VeggieTales, it took quite a few years after the release of Toy Story for 2D animation in the West to become a completely endangered species. But after a few of these movies flopped astronomically hard at the box office, that's when the full transition into 3D animation came into full swing. And for that very fact, I will hate Pixar forever. But as time moves on, things change along with age. Disney and Pixar being the absolute units of the 3D game for more decades to come, but in those decades, I can't help but to notice that in following suit to the Pixar and Disney trend of slight hyperrealism within their animation style, a lot of bigger studios in the early 2000s to mid-2010s have lost their sense of visual identity. And that's most definitely not to say that 3D animation is lesser than or inferior to 2D, because some of my favorite animated films of all time are 3D and beautifully animated, like Ratatouille or Megamind. But it's more so about the distinct visual flair and presentation rather than the fluidity of the animation itself. A lot of times when going into theaters to see an animated film, I always overhear people say their thoughts on how they felt about the movie. Things like, wow, that movie was so good, I watch it again! That movie was kinda mid, I'm not gonna lie. That one part of the movie was fucking hilarious. That was a pretty cool movie.
Excuse me? It didn't have a realistic portrayal of a panic attack?
That was such a sad movie. You know, things like that. But I rarely ever hear people say, wow, The animation in that movie was amazing. And that's not to say people don't say that. I'm just one person on the internet, you know, what do I know? But the medium of animation is one of beauty and creativity. It's a medium where you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. And it's an expressive art form that is supposed to expand the mind and be a spectacle for eyes to see. But oftentimes, you'll usually hear people say they enjoyed the film because it was simply a good movie that just happens to be animated, and not, I enjoyed this film because it's a good movie and because it's animated. For a very, very out-of-nowhere example, like Russian animation legend Genndy Tartakovsky, you can almost always tell when he's worked on something, from Dexter's Lab to Samurai Jack, Primal, Symbiotic Titan, or even Hotel Transylvania. Yeah, he definitely worked on those. Almost all of his animated projects are unique and distinct in their own way, all being fluidly animated pieces of art, of course, but all of these aren't just simply good because they give off the illusion of movement like animation should, but they're also good because he gives his work a special sense of style and visual identity, and that's exactly what makes him so memorable. When people see a project by him, they automatically recognize that style and go, hey look, it's the Tartakovsky style. It's the Tartakovsky style. But at this point in the video, I know some of you guys are probably thinking, Juice, what the fuck does any of this have to do with Spider-Verse? And to that I say, shh. Let me cook, please.
This is a pretty hardcore origin story.
It's okay. We're gonna figure it out.
Were you followed?
No, I don't think so.
Hey.
When Spider-Verse first came out on December 14th of 2018, that shit was everywhere. I literally could not escape it. On posters, in stores, on billboards, on that piece of candy I stole from my local Walmart that one time. And everyone was talking about it. And at the time, I really wasn't into superheroes anymore, so I didn't actually felt compelled to see it on opening weekend. But one day when I was walking down the street, a random robber came up to me, held me at gunpoint, and whispered into my ears, "Hey, you seen that new Spider-Verse?" And of course I said no, but before I could even let out another word, he shot me and I was dead. Next thing I knew, I woke up before God himself, and he said, Hey, you seen that new Spider-Verse movie yet? I stuttered and said, no, but before I could even say anything else, God said, shh, now is not your time, my sweet child. Go watch that movie. And he literally resurrected me just so I can watch that movie. Yeah. That actually happened. So yeah, I watched it, of course, and everything everyone said about it was absolutely true. The writing, the story, the humor, the emotion was all beautiful, but more importantly, the animation. Spider-Verse came into the scene and changed animation forever. With its perfect blend of comic book styled inspiration being a perfect mesh of 2D and 3D animation, it was all around perfect and enough to blow the minds of millions. It's a film that works as a perfect deconstruction of the superhero genre and functions as an even more coherent superhero film overall. There's very, very little this film does wrong, and I can go on for hours about how much it does right, and that's even more true with its sequel Across the Spider-Verse. It's just that good. But its animation just doesn't simply exist so it can pass off as an animated film. Its animation exists because it wants to truly tell a story. Its animation is an extension of its storytelling. The animation in Spider-Verse feels like such a breath of fresh air, but I do hear a lot of people mistakenly say that Spider-Verse created this type of animation, when that's simply just, you know, not true. Movies like 2015 underrated French film Adama that blends 2D and 3D elements for characters and backgrounds, or Disney short film Paperman that blends 3D and 2D, with 2D being the more prominent focal point, having 3D elements complement and enhance the existing 2D, or even the fucking Peanuts movie, which is a very good movie by the way, go watch that, which all existed way before Spider-Verse came out and are really perfect examples of this now popularized blend of animation. And when people usually say, hey, this looks kind of like the Spider-Verse art style, to literally any film that has a stylistic blend of 2D and 3D, I get exactly what they mean automatically, but I feel like that's kind of disingenuous and a bit undermining of Spider-Verse as an animated film and as a medium of animation itself. Even though Spider-Verse didn't create this style of visual presentation, its innovative leap indirectly caused a lot of other individual creators and big studios to follow suit and allow animators to actually be creative and more visually expressive with what they're animating. Spider-Verse has a clearly comic book inspired low frame rate style that expertly expertly utilizes screen tones, word bubbles, speed lines, panel borders, expressive onomatopoeia, and more to give off that early Jack Kirby era comic book feel and give the film its own distinct sense of individuality. And that goes for a lot of modern films that are adapting this style. There's not a single movie on this entire planet right now that looks exactly like Spider-Verse, and that's okay, because Spider-Verse paved the way for others to create their own sense of individuality. With the movies and shows like Mitchell's vs. the Machines that give off a teenager picture book collage-esque aesthetic to its art style, The Bad Guys that portray a very openly children's novel feel with the characters feeling almost 2D-like in nature, Puss in Boots, The Good One, which feels like a literal painting come to life with a great usage of tone and watercolor, making it feel like a film straight out of the Renaissance, TMNT Mutant Mayhem that perfectly encapsulates the feeling of a dirty sketchbook ripped right out of the pages, Intergalactic, or even Claws, to name a few more, and maybe a few others that I'm probably a little bit too lazy to name at this time. Each one of these have their own sense of visual identity that, while yes, can be compared to Spider-Verse, stand out in their own unique ways that only that movie and that movie alone can portray. Spider-Verse made it possible for studios to feel confident within themselves and their employees by taking risk. For the longest time, I feel like companies were a bit afraid to be visually creative because they were so scared of straying away from the status quo, fearing that they would be financially punished at the box office by doing something that the audience isn't usually accustomed to, pumping out soulless project after soulless project with a few gems in between, hoping that every other movie is a potential banger. But now, they don't really need to do that anymore. I mean, it probably won't stop them from doing it, but you know, they don't have to anymore. And for that, I have to thank none other than Spider-Verse. Now it's finally time for the big question that literally nobody asked me. Now that it's a more common art form to see in modern media, do I think the Spider-Verse art style is getting old? And to that, my answer is, no. I've actually seen a couple of people say that the Spider-Verse art style is getting a wee bit oversaturated as of late because so many studios are following suit to the Spider-Verse art style. And even though that statement was brought up by a very vocal minority, I felt like it was a very interesting topic to make a video about regardless. The Spider-Versification of modern media is in its early stages and has just begun. We have to take into account that Spider-Verse released it just in 2018, and that's really not that long ago. And with that, I am more than excited to see more from the Spider-Verse. Spider-Man, Into, and Across the Spider-Verse are truly one-in-a-lifetime films, and I highly recommend anyone and everyone to go see it. If you haven't seen it already, go see it. If you have seen it already, then go see it again. And for those who are probably wondering what I rate Spider-Verse films, they're both 10 out of 10, peak fiction. There's literally nothing that tops this. Like, easily one of my favorite films. Like, it's just so crazy. Like, just thinking about it has me crying inside and outside. It's just unfathomable.